All right. Welcome everybody to the packed house here at the City Council chambers. Glad to see everybody here. I'm going to call the regular Moab City Council meeting to order on February 11th, 2025 at 6 p.m. And we'll start with the pledge. And Michael, if you wouldn't mind leading us, that'd be great. Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next up, we have public comments. Do we have anybody in the public that would like to make a comment tonight? Seeing none, we will move on to department updates with Alexi. She's going to update us on a transit service that we provide for our community.
Get on this meeting.
I got one.
That was quick.
Take less distractions. It totally is.
Okay. So I'm taking this over since Richard's departure, and I'm still learning. So I'll do the best I can to walk us through the analysis of ridership over the past year, the general overview, and some potential changes that we could consider as well, and then open it up to discussion. Okay. Okay. All right, so starting with an overview of where this has been and where it's going. It started in 2018 with some hotspot funds through UDOT, and then that resulted in coming to Moab Area Transit. Downtowner was selected through a competitive process as a provider for this service. Its first season was started in March of 2023, and then we are going into the third season, so just wrapping up the second year of the service. In this past year, a few changes were made. Bike racks were added, morning hours were shifted, and the fixed route was shortened. And I'll get into some of those changes. And this is kind of the first step into heading into the next peak, which will start in March. All right, so the two types of service we offer are on-demand microtransit, which is wheelchair accessible service and has pickups and drop-offs anywhere in the service area, and the fixed route, which has 18 stops on Main Street. It just runs in a loop. People can pick it up whenever they want. The on-demand service currently is the only service that's being operated non-peak. So it's Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then during the peak, it moves up to 8 a.m. And then we also have the fixed route, which runs from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. This is different from the first year where it just ran 9 to 9 daily in the peak season. So the on-demand and the fixed route are not offset slightly. And we'll look a little bit at the times that those are used as we go through this. Okay, first, the service area. The orange markers are the stops on the fixed route. And then we also have that green area, which is the service area that's provided by the on-demand service. So somebody can request to ride in that area and to be dropped off somewhere else in that service area. So brief comparison of 2023 to 24 service. We have 2,906 unique rider accounts, and people's ridership experience is generally rated well. They rated around average of 4.89 out of 5. So that aspect of the service is going pretty well. And overall, people seem to be having similar usage to the past. Passenger trips for the on-demand service are very similar. With the caveat to that is it only ran half a month of March in 23, so there's a slight time difference there by a couple of weeks. But the passengers per hour is steady. wait time, other things. People have started using it even more for wheelchair rides. And then with the fixed route, we've seen a little pickup in service, going from 1.4 to 2.3 passengers per hour. And the loop time has reduced because the route, which used to run all the way down to USU on the south end, now USU is served only by the on-demand service, and that shortened the route, made it a little more feasible for people to take the fixed route in a shorter period of time. So this has a lot going on. It's breaking out service by month over the 2 years that we've been operating. The dark blue is on-demand service, and the lighter blue line is tracking the users per hour, passengers per hour. And then orange is our fixed route. And then the lighter orange line is showing the passengers per revenue hour on the fixed route. What we can see is that people like this usage during the on-demand service has flattened out a little bit. Like there's a little bit of a pickup in April and October in the second year. So that's becoming a little more stable throughout the peak season. And the passengers per hour have picked up somewhat on the fixed route in the second year as well. You can see that the orange disappears in November through February, and that's because it's on demand only for those months. Okay, breaking it out into times of day people are using the services. Keep in mind the fixed route doesn't start running until 11 a.m., so that's why nobody's using it in the mornings. They have really similar usage patterns, though slightly different in terms of when people use them. The on-demand is pretty stably used throughout the day with a peak around 4 p.m. and a little earlier afternoon, whereas the fixed route gradually increases and peaks a little more in the evening around 5 and 6. Okay, this is where the service goes in terms of the fixed route has the stops on the left and the number of passengers that were picked up at those stops. I marked some of those on the hotspot map on the right just for reference. And the map on the right is the on-demand heat map where people are asking for service for pickup. And I marked a few hotspots on that one too in the blue color, hospital around Apache, scenic view, KOA. That just sort of gives an idea of where people are requesting rides in kind of a broad dimension. Okay, so overall, what we're seeing is that some of the changes that happened last year, the morning hour extension that seemed to work well, people were getting service they needed earlier, as opposed to there was a big bump at 9 a.m. in the first year. And by adding service at 8 a.m., people seem to have a more steady usage throughout the day, and they haven't been seeing any requests for an earlier service. So that seems to be going well. Shifting the USU stop to on-demand only shortened the fixed route, seemed to make it easier for people to use. It might have contributed to the increase of use on that route. And bike racks are now in use on all vehicles. So one thing that we would like to improve is on-demand service currently still exceeds the fixed route in ridership. More people are using it per hour, about 7 versus a little over 2. So something we can consider is enhancing signage, advertising for the fixed route, trying to make the stops more noticeable, or we can also consider other modifications that would reduce congestion, but also serve more people through the fixed route. And that's the summary I have for you today. I'm interested in your thoughts or recommendations.
Questions for Lexi? Comments, thoughts?
I guess, has there been any discussion on getting rid of the fixed routes and being only on demand? Would that help anything?
There has been discussion on it. Downtowner, the provider, likes it. We've had some discussion as well about whether that would reduce congestion if we have a micromobility, all the buses moving around all the time, that might not actually reduce congestion, which was the intent of the grant. Yeah. So I guess there are pros and cons to doing it.
My other question is that on the off-peak season times, is there data on, like, is there a huge influx like right at 9 o'clock when people are looking? Because I know that on when it was announced that that it was going from fixed and it was going from 9 to 5. Through like social media stuff, people were saying like, well, what about people who have to go to work at 9 that rely on this, And so I was just kind of wondering like if that was an issue, and if there was ever talk about like having it start like at 8:30 or something and go till 5:30 to accommodate people who kind of had that 9 to 5, work constraints, that was
Like in
that was a
particular,
thing. Or if you were seeing that on your end of people saying, having it start at 9, I'm late for work, and stuff, if there's any consideration of
For
that.
the fixed or the on demand?
On demand.
I think
It
on
starts
the-
at 8.
It starts at 8 now.
Yeah.
No, it's at 9.
No,
it starts at 8
Which
during
we
the peak
moved it after
season.
some input last year.
I thought I read this. I thought I read that it
Yeah,
was
so during
non-peak.
non-peak, it's 9. Mhm.
Yeah, it's
I
9
think it's
to
8.
5. And so that's what,
oh,
And I was surprised, Jason, to see those numbers, because I think when we had this discussion last time, we were all really excited to see what would happen if we added the 8 o'clock
yeah.
in time. And I would have expected it to be higher, based on what the assumptions that we had made at that time. And to see that 9 o'clock and even 10 o'clock were even higher than the 8 o'clock surprised me. So I think that's interesting data that we're looking at right there.
Right. But
It did help with that backlog because before there was this big 9 a.m. spike and it spread that group out over.
yeah, but is it the same thing off peak
Mhm.
from that 9 to 5? See what I'm saying? Because it doesn't start till 9. So if I have to go to work at 9 and I want to use the transit, I
Mhm.
can't use it because I'll be late for work.
Yeah. Well, I certainly think of our, the way I think of it is the on-demand servicing locals and the fixed route being more catered towards visitors. And so I could absolutely see that, the adding the off-season, the earlier for people have to get to work.
I'm just wondering if you guys are seeing that
Sure.
on your end. Like, is there, because I don't think there's an off-peak slide of usage, like, is there a whole bunch of people right at 9 o'clock, requesting rides, versus.
Right. I haven't seen it, but I'm also just getting familiar with the data. So I'll check on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would like to say, just in defense of the fixed route, I would question whether we've done everything in our power to really to make it realize, its potential. And, and I saw on there that we were talking about, increasing the advertising and stuff, outreach to hotels. It is reassuring to see the hot spots, in those hotel centers in downtown. But I would hate to scrap the fixed route without really feeling like we've done our due diligence and really tried to realize its potential.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. And we did have some discussions earlier with staff about things that we could do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the signage at the bus stops downtown, lots of opportunities there to really see if we can build it out.
Yeah, I'm supportive of more signage and more advertising. I know that when dispersed parking first started and there were some conversations about where larger buses could park, they were open to using more of the fixed route, like pushing people to use the mat. And I think, even just advertising around that and kind of our transit system, how it works in general would be great. I think something not specific to thinking about changes for this year, but a question that I'm getting, kind of concerns that I'm hearing. I don't know if you know this yet, but just kind of if the city's starting to think about kind of plans for what's going to happen with the mat, how we're going to fund the mat as that hotspot funding starts to decrease over time. I don't know if we're there yet, or.
It's a good reminder. We're starting to get into budget right now, and do we have 2 years left on
Yeah.
this program?
3.
We have a
this year.
5-year pilot. We're going into year 3.
Yeah, so
We have 3 years left.
it's a good reminder. We need to get ahead of that. So
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about is there's some funding from the state, a transit tax. And when we first learned about that, we met with the county, because right now the county gets all that money, but they don't have a transit service. And so I think that's something that Michael's gonna look into. We got some information that it wasn't what we thought it was, but then after Richard left, he sent me a text and said, you guys qualify for this 0.25% sales tax. The problem is that it would take money away from the county. So there's some massaging we would have to do there with the county. And we did meet with them once when we first implemented this. And of course, they, you know, they were open to share, you know, they right now, they're budgeted $50,000 a year to help support the transit service. But I don't think we got that money last year, and that's something you need to follow.
Yeah, I can find that.
Because it came from TRT, and they were, after, when they did that audit, they found out they couldn't use that money
Got it.
for the transit.
Right.
So
feel-
some more work that needs to be done, I think, for us to see where we can get some funding to keep this going. I think we really want to keep it going if we can.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think especially as I'm hearing about it being really useful for people that live out in Spanish Valley. And I feel like with all the TRT stuff that we're looking at, I think that that's maybe in some of the code changes that are being proposed that TRT could be, you know, that could be a conversation about.
I don't think transit is part of it.
I thought I heard that.
I don't think so.
No, it was, it is.
It is?
I think with the new
Oh,
changes.
oh,
that-
good. That'd be great.
Hey,
Yeah.
yeah. Then, are we done? Are you?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Alexia, it also just occurred to me too, that you and I are working on this non-motorized travel management plan. And one of the things that's come up in the request for proposals is, you know, working with local businesses to develop like an active visitorship. And what a great opportunity to work with downtown businesses and to work with hotels to, you know, really highlight the MAT service.
Definitely. I agree.
Anybody else? Is everybody good with kind of continuing with the fixed route in demand for now?
Mhm.
And then see if we, get- you know, I know last year we requested more advertising, better signage. Not sure if that happened. You know, I really think working with the hotels is really key because that's what we would like is for people to leave their car in the parking lot of the hotel and come downtown and walk around and then get on the bus and go back to their hotel. So that's something, Lexi, that would be great if you could look in to see how much of that happened.
Mhm.
And then your idea of maybe seeing if we could increase the time during off-peak to a little earlier,
Mhm.
maybe 8 to 6
Hmm.
instead of 9 to 5,
Yeah.
if that's a possibility, and just see if that makes a difference, because I think it's important to understand that those people still have to work December through March, you know,
Mhm.
and we should be able, hopefully can accommodate them. Anything else that you guys want to add?
Do you know how many vans are dedicated to the fixed route and are dedicated to the on-demand each day?
The way they were describing it to me was 2 on demand, 1 on the route.
Okay,
I don't know if it's always run the same way.
no, that makes sense. Okay.
One other thing to keep in mind too, is there was conversations when we started this, at some point, they're gonna need to replace those vans, and we wanted them to consider electric or at least hybrid.
Nice.
And so we're on 3 years, I don't know how long they last, but don't want downtowner to forget that that's something that we really would like to see.
Okay.
Great,
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Alexi.
thank you. Okay. Next up, consent agenda. We have 2 items, 4.1, 4.2, approval of the minutes from January 28th, regular city council meeting, and then approval of the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $420,550.29. Much more reasonable number.
Yeah.
Easier for you, right?
So much easier. A half full box. That's wonderful.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I can move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Tawny,
Right.
second.
Second that.
Seconded by Colin. Discussion, Tawny?
Nope.
Colin?
None.
Anybody else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right, Obi, you're up with our next general business item, which is a consideration of approval of a sole source procurement with Hubbard Technology for $96,916.89 for a drum screen basket for the wastewater reclamation facility. This is, they just apparently, when they were doing their scheduled maintenance, found out that this needed to be replaced. And talking to Obi earlier, they think that it will be in their current budget. So we just need Obi to kind of tell you what it's about and your consideration.
Yeah, so earlier this year, we did scheduled maintenance on one of the machines at the plant, the drum screen, which pulls out rags and feminine wipes, that sort of thing. And we found damage to the drum screen. It's the round one, if you guys remember the tour that spins. Yeah, so it's that round spinny part that's broken. The arm that holds it on there was cracked. We tried to repair it. That didn't work, and so now we need to buy a new one. And so, yeah, if you looked at it, you had the question about there's an invoice that was for the original repair, and then this is for the purchase of the drum screen itself, which was just under 50,000, 47,000, something like that. Any questions?
Seems like it's something that's needed.
So Obi, with the wipes and all the other stuff that creates such a problem in these systems, are we, have we done any informational like outreach with stuff like that? And I know.
We have, I mean, we sent stuff out or with the bills in the past.
Okay,
Yeah, there's been some, but we see a big uptick, around March when the
Got
tourists
it.
show up. Yeah.
Any other questions for Obi? I'll ask for a motion to approve the procurement.
I can make it. I move to approve the purchase of a drum screen and associated repairs in the amount of $96,916.86 from Huber Technology.
Motion by Colin, second.
Second.
Second by Luke. Discussion, Colin?
None.
Luke?
No.
Anybody else?
I just appreciate the description of the round spinning thing. I get
Yeah, I did too. I thought that was, very appropriate. Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
So be.
Thanks, Obi.
So be.
Next up, item 5.2, consideration of adoption of ordinance 2025-03 electric utility franchise and general utility easement agreement between Rocky Mountain Power and the city of Moab. This is the franchise agreement that we've been working on for a while, and we're ready for your consideration.
Okay. A lot of this is in the agenda summary. I'm going to state it for the record, and if you have questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to. So Rocky Mountain Power provides electricity to Moab, and we like electricity, so we let them use our right of ways. And those areas require an agreement with us because that's our power as a city to regulate them. And that's what this franchise agreement does. Is it sets forth the rules for how they can use those public ways that the city has. And in this case, it takes the form of an ordinance. So our agreement expired in October. With staff changes, it's just coming here now. And Nathan assisted me through the process. So I'll point out a few points that either are things that were negotiated or might be of particular interest. And then we'll get to any discussion you might have. Okay, so I'm just going to walk through the agreement. I highlighted some things, which is a little hard to see on the screens. But section 1 is sort of the meat of the agreement. It's the important part of what Rocky Mountain Power gets out of this, and the rest of it is setting terms to that. It's over the course of 10 years, which often these are pretty long-term agreements. This was sort of a medium-term agreement that with just 10 years. Let's see, they'll accept this if we sign it. So at that point, they would get the signed ordinance from us, and then they would send us an official acceptance that they are going to provide service. It's non-exclusive, meaning that we still have access to the right of ways. We can still regulate who else gets to use them. They will follow the city's rules and regulations. This is listed in a couple places in this ordinance. So they will have to abide by laws at every level, including at the local level. Furthermore, they collect the municipal energy sales and use tax on our behalf, and they pay it to the city from customers. Okay. Section 7, the city is not liable or responsible for any loss or damages by Rocky Mountain Power in the maintenance of its electrical facilities. And then going into section 9, this goes further on to explain how Rocky Mountain Power will follow our code for permitting. And in addition to permitting, they will notify us 2 days in advance before actually commencing the work, so we're aware of the dates that it's going to happen. And even for work that does not require permitting, they'll notify city staff 2 days in advance if it causes a traffic impact to minor or major arterial or minor or major collector roads. That's just to make sure that we know what's going to happen and we have a plan for any kind of detours. All right, 9.6, we do have limited access for safety reasons to the poles that they have. And 9.7, they will notify us if they're putting anything underground and that we can use that trench at our own expense if we would like to. 9.8, except where there's an emergency. Rocky Mountain Power will remove its electric facilities from our public ways if they are no longer being used for 12 months. If they plan to not use them, there still can be telecoms on those same poles. And if that is the case, that Rocky Mountain Power is ceasing to use the pole, but there are still third-party attachments, they will deed the poles over to a third party. So at least we know who the responsible party is for that pole in our way. Okay, we're getting close to the end of this summary. Rocky Mountain Power will have to relocate things if needed by the city, but not if it's for a private development. Meaning they don't have to pay the cost for that relocation if it's for private development. That would be a separate negotiation. Okay, termination. So it's a 10-year agreement. Either party can terminate the agreement with 120 days notice. Once we get to that expiration, if we still don't have a new agreement, it will renew for an additional 2 years to finish the negotiation. If we still haven't figured out a new agreement at that point, then it would terminate. And finally, I'm going to move down to, for any legal action, our venue is Salt Lake City. This is because it was the most convenient for both parties to have it go there. And we have a few things that are going into city contracts about governmental immunity, and both parties are agreeing to waive a jury trial. Most of these things are negotiated beforehand anyway, as opposed to going to a jury trial. So it's not waiving legal rights, it's waiving the legal right to a jury trial, but not to some sort of legal resolution. Okay, that is the summary. Does anyone have questions? Yeah.
I do. Once this is signed, can we use 10-1 to ask Rocky Mountain Power to move some of the lights, the poles that are in the middle of sidewalks on Main Street? Does that fit under that?
Potentially.
Okay.
I haven't broached that topic with them. I wondered the same thing.
Yeah, I think I was looking at that as well, and there's no qualification except that we feel that it's convenient or necessary. And so we have to give them something in writing. We could take that for a test drive and see what happens.
Yeah,
Mhm.
excellent.
Yeah, one of the things I suggested is to replace those lights with the new lights out on dispersed parking, which I think are awesome,
Yeah.
especially for dark skies. They're really good. But I don't know if that's an option too, but I did suggest that.
That's a great option, if it's possible. But, and then the other option too, that's something that we talked about with UDOT in our walk around is, how those lights where they're currently positioned service the roads very well, but not actually the pedestrian
Right,
sidewalks.
right.
So moving them back so that they're eliminating the sidewalks too is a big safety improvement.
I had kind of that same question as well as, does this cover like streetlights? Like if they have streetlights on power poles? does it cover, like, is there anything, I know we've run into issues like with Rocky Mountain Power not servicing, the light poles. Is this the contract that that we would have with Rocky Mountain Power that said, hey, you'll change these light bulbs in a, so, in a amount of time that's, keeps it safe, because, or is that another contract?
So we do pay them separately to do that. So it's a part of what we pay them on a monthly basis to maintain those lights. Good move on that front is the police have started reporting those lights, anything that they see on their patrols in the evening. Sydney, who's in the room, and the Sustainability Vista has been helping me report them. She's reported over 50 lights. She has work orders. So there ought to be a lot of lights coming back.
Nice. And my other question was, is like, if we abandon a pole and say there's another company that has stuff on that pole, they will deed it over to that company. Did I read that right? Or did you explain that right?
Yeah.
And like, so then do we automatically have the same contract with them after like the renewal period after 10 years? Or do we have an option to be like, these guys abandoned it. Now there's X company on it. We don't really want X company there. Do we have a right to not renew that contract for XYZ company that's now using that light bulb that got it deeded to them? Or should we have first refusal of the deed?
That's a really good question. I think,
Go ahead.
you go ahead.
I was going to say, we do have franchise agreements with other utilities that are using poles because they're also in the right of way. So what I would imagine is if they deeded it over to a company that we have a different franchise agreement it would probably fall under that other agreement.
But we probably should take a look at all of our agreements, make sure our language is similar in all of them and everything. But yeah, we should have agreements with anybody who's operating in the right of way.
Yeah.
And I think it would default to that agreement at that point. But if I understood it correctly, if Rocky Mountain Power stops using it, could we then say that nobody can use it? Is that?
No, like if, so like Rocky Mountain Power has a light pole or has a utility power pole. And also say there's an internet company that's using that pole as well. Rocky Mountain Power says, hey, we don't need this pole anymore. We pull it down. And then that pole is just there for the internet company. And then Rocky Mountain Power deeds it over to the internet company without, they can just deed it over to them without going through us. And then we're now, if maybe this pole doesn't quite fit with what we want it to do, or something like that, are we automatically in this binding agreement because it got deeded to the power company? Like
There should.
Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm
It does make
explaining that right. Like if we should, like, if there's giving up a power pole, maybe the city should have first right of refusal to take over,
because we lose all the protection.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And maybe we don't have an agreement with that internet company, and now we're now, beholden to them.
Yeah,
for
good
for the.
So that is a good question. It's really, how do we get ourselves in first position if they get rid of any polls so we can have first right? So we can look into that. We can talk to the attorneys about that and see if that's potentially an amendment, or if you want to. I don't know, Alexi, what do you think? Do you think they could make a motion to add that tonight? Or do you think, are we past that point with the franchisee?
Right. We would probably have to bring it back to Rocky Mountain Power for them to review that change. I think the other thing that we would need to do is verify whether or not we have already signed agreements with other, let's say, telecoms that are in our right of way, in which case it would be covered by us ensuring that all of our franchise agreements are covering these bases, as opposed to this particular one, because they're required by law to let certain organizations use their polls. And I am not familiar with if we have agreements with all of the other organizations that are on those polls.
So what I'd suggest is that we go ahead with this agreement, get this done, because this has been going on for a while. And then we explore the other one and maybe there would be potentially an amendment or an addendum that came to this one instead of revising this, just add it to it. If that's possible, if we can negotiate something with Rocky Mountain Power, which I don't see why they would have any issue with, to be honest with you, but we have to.
Yeah, I think it
explore
makes
that.
sense if we could do an addendum on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, technology is different than it was 20 years ago,
Sure.
and there may become a time where these things all become obsolete. or
Mm.
something.
Any other-
Lexi,
Go ahead.
how much of the dispersed parking lights are operational at this point?
I don't know.
A lot of them at
A lot of
least.
them.
Yeah,
All
a
the
lot
ones on
of-
Center Street are.
Yeah, but there are still some that have yet to be turned on. Is that correct?
I don't know.
I haven't gone around and looked. When I drive where I drive, they're all on.
Okay.
I just figured they were all on. So, but we,
Any member reach out with that question?
yeah, we'll check into that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Motion.
I will make a motion to approve ordinance number 2025-03, electric utility franchise and general utility easement agreement between Rocky Mountain Power and the city of Moab.
Motion by Jason, second.
I can second that.
Second by Colin. Discussion, Jason?
No, I just appreciate you looking into that part of it there. bro.
I will.
Colin?
Done.
Anybody else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thanks, Alexi.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 5.3, consideration of an adoption of proposed ordinance 2025-02, an ordinance approving the zoning map amendment for the parcel located at 198 East Center Street, Moab, Utah, 84532, parcel number 01-OB13-0016, from C2 commercial to residential zone, C3 central commercial zone. I'm going to request that we table this at the request of the applicant. I know the planning commission met last night, and so the applicant has requested that we table this motion until he's ready to bring it back, if he's ready to bring it back. So if I could just have a motion just to table without a timeline on it.
So the applicant, after what happened last night with the planning commission, is now reviewing his request to come to us. Is that
Yes,
okay?
reconsidering it.
Reconsidering?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the turnaround time, even for him, was really quick. So tonight wasn't good for him anyways. And then you not having the opportunity to have the time to review it as well. Lots of things. So,
And there were some suggestions made last night for him
To pursue.
to come back in a different manner.
yeah, and since this is applicant driven, it's really their choice. Yeah, if they want to move forward or not.
Makes sense.
Yeah, the commission provided a lot of guidance in terms of like, I think potentially staying in C2 would have met the needs that he was asking for, and moving into C3 might end up causing things that he did not want. And in general, like the request doesn't fall in line with kind of regular zoning standards. And it was proposed that he potentially seek a code amendment where we try to fix things on a larger scale rather than piecemeal.
Thanks, Luke.
Have a motion table.
Move to table.
All right, got a motion by Luke. Second by
I'll second.
Caitlin. Discussion, Luke.
It's kind of tangentially related to this. Like this is bringing up an issue that I think is pretty prevalent within the community, where zones that individuals find themselves in also find them like being in a legal non-conforming status. And I'm concerned that this is having a negative impact in terms of like our local businesses being able to like grow or adapt to a changing and growing economy. And so if we could start taking some action so that we can look at things on a broader scale and
kind of ideally head off more and more of these kind of individualized requests. Because I feel like ultimately, like a lot of individual requests are going to put an extra burden on planning staff and the planning commission.
Yeah.
Whereas if we can just kind of like wholesale make changes to like what is identified as like the most common issues that are preventing any sort of like meaningful change or growth or anything like that to happen.
Is that part of the zone title change?
Yeah, if I, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, Corey and I have talked about this actually. The current code and how it deals with non-conforming uses is probably not ideal. There's a lot of non-conforming uses or non-conforming buildings, and yeah, we want to limit how many non-conforming uses there are, but we don't want to put everybody out of business. And sometimes it's necessary for people to expand a little bit. So most communities have a provision for the expansion of a non-conforming use. And so Corey and I have talked about that. We are reviewing the code right now, and that should be one of the things that is part of the update.
Yeah, that'd be great. Cause like one of the things that was pretty consistently brought up in both commission meetings about this specific parcel is that our zoning code is just so out of date and hasn't been updated. And so like, I want to adhere to kind of like our zoning like principles and like characteristics and all that stuff, but it's also really hard where like residents are being punished because council hasn't taken action for decades.
Yeah, we should update our code. And I can update you on where we are with that in my manager's report.
Yeah, we'll do that at the end. That's all right.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
All right, Caitlin, comments?
I do have comments kind of different from this. I'm sure partially, we did talk about looking at our C2, C3 zoning at strategic planning. So I think that's part of it. When I was looking at this, I think that this item got a little bit complicated because it was related to the Wabi relocation. And while we're not taking that into consideration for a rezone, I know that was a big push to get this on the agenda. And then when that kind of settled itself out outside of rezoning, it, raised different questions about this. I think one of the things for me, as I was, I watched the planning commission meeting, tried to look at the future land use plan. I think because this building was Four Corners for so long, in our future land use plan, it is kind of in a civic use zone. Even though it's zoned more as like it is commercially zoned, but was treated as more like a civic facility. And so that's something I'm thinking about too, now that the building is empty, there are so many other potential uses. So, I'm happy to table because I see pros and cons to rezoning this. I think that for me, going through the criteria, especially considering, potential for new use, considering dispersed parking, considering the way we're looking at downtown master planning. I think that for me, this could trigger some of that about redevelopment of this area. So I think that, I agree with the applicant's explanation that this is worthwhile for considering. I think that there are just bigger things that I would like to work out in code to see how that shakes out first. See if he even, wants to continue to pursue C3 since we're considering updates to the code. So those are my thoughts coming into this.
Anybody else? Okay, motion by Luke, seconded by Caitlin to table the ordinance number 25-02. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Our last item of business tonight is item 5.4, a statement of the city of Moab regarding the continued joint evaluation of Arches National Park water and wastewater project by the National Park Service Southeast Utah Group. This is basically just a letter letting the Park Service know that we're interested in them moving forward with this idea of connecting to our wastewater treatment plant or however that plays out. And also for water services, it does not say that we're absolutely going to do it, but we do want them to continue. We've got to do our own analysis and benefit study. So we just wanted to, this Park Service asked if we could write this letter because they're trying to get some great outdoor funding. That they think that they might be able to get in 26. So that's essentially what this is. And I don't know if you have any questions for me. If not, I'll just ask for a motion to approve. And then you'll send it off to Luna.
Yes.
No, I'll make a motion to approve the letter regarding continued joint evaluation of the Arches National Park water and wastewater project.
Motion by Jason, second,
A second.
seconded by Caitlin. Discussion, Jason,
No,
Caitlin?
Nope.
Anybody else? All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay. That's the end of our general business and we'll move right on to city managers updates.
Okay, got a couple of updates for you. First, I'll start with the code update. As you know, we started this a while ago. It's put on hold for several reasons. It's back moving. Corey and Nathan are spearheading this on our end, and they are meeting weekly to go through the code that has been drafted so far with the instructions that have been given and give feedback to the drafters so that we can move it from that point to committee and start talking about that with the planning commission and everything. So it is moving forward. It's on a schedule. It's not the same schedule as when we started, obviously. But it is on a schedule and it is moving forward. And there's no limit. Like if we do find things throughout the process that we're like, oh, we need to add that to it, this is the perfect time to do that. So non-conforming uses was already on the list, but having the benefit of this conversation helps us to structure it a little bit better. And when you're writing codes and ordinances, which are laws, you don't know what you don't know when you're writing it. So having a real world example at the time that you're writing is a great opportunity for us to try and make a better ordinance. So a couple other things, the financial or federal financial assistance pause. We keep getting notices on this. But there's been a couple of rulings. There was something yesterday that another judge has granted a motion to enforce a temporary restraining order preventing the administration from implementing categorical pauses on federal funding. So while we might not be in the categorical pauses, we definitely have some funds that are at risk. We definitely have some grants that have been technically announced that we've been awarded, but we don't have contracts for yet. So we're keeping a close eye on this as it moves forward. And I'll try to update you as we get new information. Not a lot new right now, except the judges are trying to reinforce former rulings and saying, hey, we're serious. You need to pay what you need to pay. So that's going on. We've started the budget process here locally. We're reviewing personnel right now. And the discussions that we had in strategic planning have a lot to do with that. We'll have a report on that when it's appropriate, but we're looking forward to getting that going. And also we're looking at end of year projections, which is something that we'll do where we can have all the department heads do an evaluation of their budgets, show what their end of year projections are so we can see what our ending fund balance will be and what we're looking at for reserves as we head into the next year, which is also part of is a revenue source. So what we don't spend this year. Let's see, we've got some good news about hiring people. We've hired 4 people locally who have just started or are getting ready to start. We've got someone in grounds maintenance. We've got a deputy recorder, we've got an associate planner and a police officer. I'm not going to say the names tonight because they can bring them at some other time and introduce them. Although we do have Sydney here tonight, who's a Vista, who started working for the city not too long ago for Alexi. She's been doing a great job. We want to just recognize her and thank her for being here. And I think she's working on a lot of different things, including sidewalks and helping us get that sidewalk project going.
It's bizarre.
Oh, she's going to be a big part of it.
your new name
In
is
case you didn't know that.
Sydney the Sidewalk Czar.
That's right.
Luck with that. Many have tried.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll be successful.
Yeah.
So, and then I wanted to end with just a discussion about a meeting that the mayor and I had with UDOT. And this was just a week and a half ago or something like that. We met with the UDOT director and the assistant director and their region engineer as well. We had to talk about several different things. A lot of it had to do with, most of it, or all of it had to do with Main Street and some of the improvements that we've talked about already. They are getting ready to implement some temporary, or we call them, what do you call them?
Bulb outs.
Well, no, I'm thinking of the word for trial. We're doing a trial run on these bulb outs, some intersection markings. They've already made the changes on the lights. We've asked them to make some more changes on lights for pedestrian signals. We've asked them specifically to make a change on First North. We're also looking at some parking, some changes in just parking next to the crosswalks to give pedestrians more visibility. And then there's also the parking in front of the MIC, where the Moab Information Center, where the buses will now be going instead of in front of 98 Center, which I think is much more conducive to a highway, parking those big buses on the highway as opposed to parking them on our little local street.
What's
So,
the time frame for that?
March.
March, okay.
Yeah, so I don't have the exact time yet, but they are looking at March, and they should be getting some plans to me to show kind of where and what they're doing. Most of it's going to be centered around Center Street. In fact, all of it's going to be centered around Center Street. It'll kind of go out from there a little bit. First North, like I said, we'll have some changes to the lighting or to the signal timing for pedestrians, but everything else will be right there at Center Street. And then we've also asked them to do a temporary bulb out at Uranium, and to look at the potential for doing something a little bit more visible down there, as we're talking to them more about that potentially being a full signalized intersection at that location. So
Did you talk about crosswalks?
yeah, we did talk about crosswalks. They are looking, that's one of the things that will happen with this update or this trial, is that they should be using some higher visibility. It won't be thermoplastic, but they're looking at paint. They did have some questions about putting thermoplastic or paint over top of the stamped asphalt. I don't think it's an issue. It'll still be high visibility. It won't change anything as far as walkability goes, or ADA or anything like that. Now, since we're talking about pavement markings, they're also putting pavement markings north coming into town and out both sides that will remind people what the speed limits are, pavement markings, and then also increasing the size of the signs where they are instructing trucks to stay in the left lane. And as you heard from our police department, they've had more enforcement going on downtown, and you saw the stats in the newspaper probably, and we've sent those stats to you, I think, as well. The speed limit sign, the signs, the changing of the speed limit, they are still working on that. Everything that we talked about except for the downtown portion, that will stay 30 miles an hour for now. They're still doing evaluations on that. But what they found is that pretty much the 85th percentile is right around 32 miles an hour. They don't have to go off the 85th percentile, but it's a pretty good indication of what people are driving.
And they're collecting more data. They wanted to collect more data during the high season because they collected all this data in the winter. So they're going to collect more data, and they wanted to gather that before we, change the limit to 25, if that's something we want to do. So more to come on that.
It's not dead.
It's not dead.
It is not dead at all. They're still considering it. In fact, surprisingly, they are still considering it. We heard some pros and cons from them at the table when we met with them, and so they're looking at both sides of it.
And I'm happy to report that, at the end of the meeting, they were very appreciative of the work that we're doing with UDOT, and it sounds to me like we have a great relationship with UDOT again.
That's excellent. Yeah.
So that's really good.
Did you mention Aggie Boulevard at all? Or
Yeah.
Oh, Aggie is moving forward. I don't have a date on it. The light, I believe, has been designed. It is just a matter of getting the the contractor down to install it. So, and we will be doing some of the work. We're gonna be taking out that little pork chop, if you will, the right turn off of off of Mill Creek, heading north onto 191. We'll be taking that part out, because that will now be a turn lane. So. And then we're doing the bike lanes too. We're changing the bike lanes as well.
That pork chop, is that a official term? Is it?
It is actually.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
Heard that.
I haven't heard it in a long time. So it might be an old term, but I know what it means, and you knew what it means.
I keep using it. yeah.
You knew what it meant, man, as soon as I said it, didn't you? So, okay, that was it for me.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you.
Michael.
Yep. Moving on to council reports. Jason.
So I didn't have a whole lot last 2 weeks. I did do a travel council meeting tonight, and some big changes within the travel council. They elected a new chair and vice chair. The new chair for the travel council is Lori McFarland, and Wendell Williams is the co-chair. So it'll be great. And then they kind of talked about some goals that they would like to achieve. The county commission has set a goal for a 6% growth in the county overall. So it kind of tasked the travel council with trying to do what they can to be a part of that growth and what they can do.
Growth of what?
Just economic growth in general for the county.
And how are they going to measure that?
That's yet to be decided. Yeah, but that's just what their goal was.
Okay.
So I can't answer that part for you. Some of the discussions came up was that they're trying to work on is, it sounds like the commission has given the travel council, which they're working on a name change. It'll no longer be called the TCAB, the
Travel Council Advisory Board.
economic development or somewhere under that. They're having their own name. So they're just, that's more, has tourism in its title and stuff like that. And it sounds like the commission is tasked the travel council with creating, ideas for new billboards. They've given, sounds like a 60-day window to change the messaging on billboards. And so they're working on that. And then they're still working on a website, which should be done in June to replace the old Discover Moab website. So a lot of big changes within that board, and they're working on a lot of stuff to try to promote, do more of a promotion on tourism.
Are they worried? Was there any discussion, Jason, on, what's going on internationally and the impact that may have on tourism here?
Yeah, so they did talk about that a little bit. They didn't talk about necessarily any trends, of people not traveling, because of our current political situation or the economy and stuff like that. The Travel Council is going to ITB, which is a huge travel show in Berlin, Germany, in a couple weeks, and they are taking one of the board members with them to that board, just so they can kind of see what the rest of the world is doing, because Moab it was brought up, Moab is competing with Greece, other places throughout the whole world. It's not just competing us Disneyland, and trying to get kind of a pulse on what we need to do to become a destination. They talked about that they are going to the off-road, the off-road network, or there's an off-road expo in a couple weeks in Salt Lake City, and they're gonna go to it and actually present, that motorized recreation is welcome, and that because they feel like they've lost some ground with that and some traction, and so there's gonna be some big changes, and I think that they have tasked this board with coming up with where the county goes as far as marketing stuff. So yeah, those are big things.
Good.
I have, there's a chamber, retreat tomorrow that I will be at for most of the day. You know, and the chamber is also discussing, where they want to go in the next, this year and stuff. And so they'll be even talking about things, on that as far as, activities of promoting, how they can support businesses, this year. And so there's a lot going on within in the community councils and stuff. So that's,
Jason, your role on the travel council advisory board, is it a voting? Are you a
no,
voting
it's
member?
not voting.
But are you gonna talk about the legislation and maybe how that affects?
Yes.
Okay.
So that could be changing.
Yeah,
We requested it when we
Yeah,
met with the league. And then they also talked to the sponsors, and the bill just came out.
yeah.
yeah.
And so my understanding is that is in the bill, because we asked specifically that.
It is
we
in the
had a
bill.
voting.
Great.
Yeah, and that's, I've been following a lot of the legislative sessions. I've been doing the ULCT, weekly meetings. A lot of it, they kind of, Bruce, we've been talking on TRT. There is going to be some changes in that, I don't know, looking at it, I don't know that there's a whole lot in it that, we'll see how it affects the city, and if we become eligible for any TRT funds, because there's a lot written in there for search and rescue, for, mitigation. They did include roads, which is really good that can be spent on. There was transportation, but I got to think about the transportation thing that we were talking about before. And I thought that it said that it could be included for transportation to and from trailheads or something like that. I need to go back and look at that, but I think it was something along those lines, if I remember right. And then a lot of things on the hill they're talking about is like sizes of garages, and that kind of like, I don't know, kind of over my head, or kind of like, like people arguing about square footage of homes and square footages of garages, and I'm like,
Things don't really
this is a
impact
thing,
us.
and stuff, and then also paying for infrastructure, within cities, which is a big deal. So anyway, that's kind of all I have right now.
Thanks, Luke.
I basically just had the 2 planning commission meetings over these past 2 weeks. Once again, want to give kudos to our planning commission. They had some really, really thoughtful and thorough discussions regarding the zone change, like so much so that after the first meeting, the applicant and representatives of Wabi Sabi were commenting about how much they learned and like just how complicated everything is. And although I'm super excited to like see that we're getting going on the code amendments, I would be a little remiss to like not bring up the planning commission did express some concern about waiting for the code amendments to be completed before like some sort of change is made. Just because due to no fault of the city, it's been staffing or like reprioritization of stuff. The work on those things hasn't been consistent, and so it's kind of uncertain moving forward as to like when that will be done and when we can alleviate some of the pressures and kind of pains that our residents are feeling. And right now, that is kind of the certain thing that our residents are experiencing, like undue. I don't want to say undue, but they are like feeling restricted, like they are potentially missing out on opportunities to like help improve our community. And so they had requested that the council potentially look into and like discuss if there are any opportunities to come up with something that can work in parallel with the code amendment changes, where if we can identify something that is absolutely going to be a part of the new code amendment, is that something that we might start being able to like kind of bleed into some of these zones. But yeah, just wanted to make sure I was advocating on behalf of the commission in regards to that. Yeah, I think that's fine.
All right, thanks, Luke. Tawny.
I actually don't have a whole lot from the last 2 weeks. Housing Authority meets next week, and The Healthcare Special Service District meets Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
I have a conflict. I won't be at that meeting.
That it?
That's it.
Colin?
On the fifth, I had a meeting with the district manager of the solid waste district, talking about employee compensation and restructuring. And the solid waste district is really improving its operations. It's been a pretty exciting time up there and really positive meetings and much more positive outlook. So big things to come. Outside of meetings, we've been reviewing the RFP for the non-motorized travel management plan, and the work already with the RFP is just we're really working towards a incredible document that really will improve the walkability and bikeability and just an active and healthy community. And so I think this is going to be a huge benefit to our city operations and planning in the future. And then I got to watch the planning commission meeting last night, and besides learning so much, my big takeaway is just how lucky we are to have Corey. I mean, what an amazing person for that position. And so doing an incredible job. And then today we had a trail mix meeting. I'll keep talking about this every meeting, but we do have the spring spruce up. And so I'll send out, I think I threaded this last time, but I will send out an email and include you, Michael, and to some other department heads to see if we can round up some projects in the city to throw a bunch of volunteers at. Try to make some good improvements. And then again, we talked a lot about the non-motorized travel management plan today. So, and that's it for me.
And just a footnote on the solid waste district. I have heard so many complaints about people not getting their bills. I have been incredibly lucky and I get my bill all the time.
Do you? Yeah.
I do. It has not, it comes on the
Lucky.
same day
Yeah.
and I get to pay it.
Excellent. Lucky you. Yeah. Thank you for paying it.
Caitlin?
End of January, I attended a Colorado Association of Ski Towns meeting in Breckenridge. There were sessions on housing. There's a kind of a regional housing plan or assessment that they did recently. There's because I just loved it and have to share. They had a solution framework for how they are thinking about housing, which is the DEAL framework. D stands for deed restrictions, development-driven strategies. E is for education and supportive services. A is for assistance with rent and down payments, and L is legislative changes, code or statutory. They also talked about geothermal energy systems, not necessarily geothermal projects, but creating more of a system, utility system with that. And then there's some sessions and discussion about kind of municipal partnerships with ski area corporations, how they work together. Always interesting to, learn similarities and differences with what we experience and what they do. I have also been attending LPC meetings. I will let you do all of the legislative updates. It's a lot to track. We've been tracking some other housing bills on the side. Seems like this session's moving fast. I have also on the 3rd attended a Utah Renewable Communities meeting. We approved a resolution to move some funding around to start getting ready to set up the program rollout for that. And they're still moving through with Rocky Mountain Power and the commission, the Public Utilities Commission, on figuring out program guidance. And then on the 6th, attended a Moab Area Housing Task Force meeting. At that meeting, we discussed our annual goals and some of the goals and objectives in the Moab Area Housing Plan that are scheduled to start this year. We updated committee assignments. One of those committees is a dashboard committee. They've been working over the winter to create a framework to put a kind of live interactive dashboard on moabhousing.com, which will include qualitative and quantitative housing data, qualitative from an annual housing survey, which they will do the 2nd survey later this summer, and to eventually start tracking progress towards the housing plan, kind of like how the city does with our strategic plan, which I think will be really cool. And then leaders of the kind of the executive committee of the task force will be meeting with the housing subcommittee of the county, which includes commissioners, planning commissioners, and some staff and other housing related people in the community. I sent an email to all of you. Would love to start a similar conversation at the city level sometime in the next few months when we potentially have a housing vista and a new associate planner and a little more capacity. I think that's it for me.
Great, thanks,
Yeah,
Caitlin.
thanks.
Well, I was up on the hill in Salt Lake City last week. Very interesting, very tiring. Met with our representatives, Logan Monson, great guy. He's going to be a great representative for us. And also Senator Hinkins and several other reps to talk about some of the bills that we're concerned about, mainly the TRT bill, which is House Bill 456. So if you have a chance, take a look at that. There are quite a few changes. We do have a working group that includes St. George, Washington County, Grand County, and Moab. It's the cities though. The question is always the county versus the city and how that money is dispersed. But St. George and Moab and Park City are the primary people, the highest impacts. Also Springdale down outside of Zion's and Torrey at Capitol Reefs. So that's been a really great group that the league has put together to work on this bill. And we've met several times now. And then when the bill finally came out, it was good to see the language in there. Some of the concerns, one of the things that's in there that's new is working with the county on a interlocal agreement so that we can agree that some of that TRT money could come to the city for mitigation for the police department and for roads. Of course, that requires negotiation. We'll see where that goes. So still more to come. That bill just came out. There isn't a Senate sponsor yet. I'll be back up next week and we'll be working on those two bills and whatever else comes out. This is the time of year when surprises come out. So we need to really be paying close attention. The other bill that I've been working on is SB 40, and that's the rural health sales tax. And that really impacts the healthcare special service district and EMS. They changed the language. It currently states that after 10 years, if the county is implemented and the county voters have voted to implement this tax, that after 10 years, the county commissioners would just reauthorize it for another 10 years. They changed the language that it would have to go back to the voters. For us, that's a real concern because the voters are kind of tired of taxes and most of that money for the healthcare district goes to subsidize our care center. So we've been making that case up and we understand, our understanding is that there's it's still in the House Tax and Revenue Committee. And so they're looking at grandfathering those entities, and there's very few that actually use this tax, so that they just, unless they want to increase it, if the commission wants to continue it, it continues without going back to the voters. If we want to go up to the total 1%, right now we're getting 0.5%, it would have to go to the voters, and then it would open it up to a lot of other sheriff, social and rescue, fire department. They would be able to ask for some of that money. So we'll see where this goes. That's a big important one for us because if we would lose the tax, if we would go to the voters and lose that, we would lose our care center. We don't want that to happen. So more to come. I'll be up there next week. And I also had dinner while I was up there with my colleagues with the National Park Conservation Association, which was great to see those folks. There is some real concern about the timed entry at Arches. And just to give you an example, Yosemite National Park had timed entry. They were much further along in the process and it got pulled from them. So, I don't know where this is going to go. Jason and I are going back to Washington, D.C. in March. We are planning to meet with one of the, Mike Caldwell, who we met with before, and see what their concerns are. It's a little frustrating that there's been so much work and it's still stuck. And now there's a potential that we're going to lose it. That would not be good. And then, as Tawny mentioned, we have a Canyon West Healthcare Special Service District meeting. I have a Boundary Commission meeting, and then a meeting with David. David has been working with us on all this legislative stuff. He's been very helpful, coordinating meetings and getting things set up. Hopefully, I'm going to be meeting with Salt Lake City Mayor next week and perhaps Salt Lake County Mayor. Met her while I was up there. You know, it's always nice for mayors to get together and talk about being mayors, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, that's it for me. We do have a two items on the closed session. Pretty quickly, strategy session to discuss reasonably imminent or pending litigation. And then strategy session to discuss purchase and exchange of lease of real property. And if I can have a motion in that regard, we will go into closed session.
So moved.
Okay, I know the attorneys will get mad at me that you didn't actually say it.
Well, you said it, but I motion to go into executive session to discuss reasonably imminent and or pending litigation and to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property.
All right, motion by Caitlin, seconded by Jason.
Yep.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-0.